What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. We're on part 7 of the truck bed camper build. If you guys watched all the rest of the video series, you'll know that we got the whole camper done, everything's powder coated, our fabric's all done, and the camper, I have been using it and spent about 8 nights in it so far. If you haven't watched any of those videos, I do recommend you go back and check those out. It shows the entire build of the camper itself, and now we're kind of on to the final touches of customizing it and building out the interior. I really wanted to get some time with the camper and actually use it before I dove right into an interior build. I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly what I needed versus what I thought I wanted. Of course, everybody has this idea of the interior build of the rear of the truck that they think would be absolutely perfect. And then of course you get out and go camping and you wish some things were a little bit different. So spending some time with your camper and seeing what's gonna suit you best is gonna be the best thing you could possibly do, so you don't have to feel like you're gonna go back and redo something. But that's enough talking about it. Let's get right into it. We'll give you a look at the blank slate that we have here. So I did put some blue tape down. This is my general idea of what we're going to end up building. As you know, some people end up doing benches all the way down each side of the truck, which is great. It gives you ample storage, but in the end, you're sacrificing standing room. If you guys remember from the other parts of the build, the bed comes out to leave us about 30 inches of room. So my thought here is, even with the bed all the way out, we still have all this standing room versus just a tiny little square here. But the bench is still going to stick out enough to act as a bench to get up in the truck itself. We still have access to our side cubby panels, as well as some of our outlets and everything. Probably going to end up doing part of my electrical system here. We'll just kind of have to figure that out later down the road. When it came to sizing my benches, it really kind of came down to what I'm going to be storing in them. So in our driver's side bench over here, I have a Kelty double love seat that I want to be able to make sure actually fits right here. So that'll be able to store inside this bench, as well as some room for my little fold out bamboo table you guys may have seen me talk about on Instagram. And then on top of that, we'll have extra space just for various things in this bench over here. For our center one, we are going to have a 10-gallon tank where this little rectangle is. I already have the tank and I've already taped it off, just kind of mocking things up. That's going to end up being a gravity fed line of water that goes to a spigot on the back of our camper. That'll be one of the last things we add, possibly not even in this video. We'll just kind of have to see. Here, there's going to be enough space for my Blackstone griddle to sit, and that's going to be able to sit vertically. So the benches are going to be tall enough so I can just open up that back lid and just pull that out and use it. We'll have enough space here for my portable hot water shower system. So the idea here is we have our water, we have our shower, and we have our grill all dedicated to this back cubby. Nice and easy to get to. Just open up a lid and pull them out and get them to use. On the passenger side here, this is actually empty at the moment. I've just obviously sized it to match this side, but I know this will come in handy. I could probably even put my clothes bag or just any extra shoes, just anything in this bench. It'll probably just be kind of like a personal items one to keep some clutter out of the camper itself. As far as height goes, I think I'm going to go ahead and come up to right about here. So on the back wall, it'll be just above those rear bolts, and what that's going to allow me to do is actually bolt the interior system to the bed of the truck via our camper mounts here. So it'll just kind of tie everything in together. Next, I'll give you an idea of the methods of construction we're going to use. We have a bunch of leftover aluminum from the camper build itself, so it'd be silly not to use this. If you guys have watched any of my past videos, you'll know typically I build drawer systems and interior modules with 80/20 extruded aluminum, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just a little more expensive, and you really got to pre-plan all your cuts when you're ordering off the website. With this stuff, I can just kind of go with the flow and see if I want to change anything as I'm going. So I got plenty of 1x1, 1/8 of an inch wall aluminum tubing. It's actually going to end up being a little lighter than the extrusion and really allow me to customize this and have it sitting the way I want it to. Aside from that, we got some ACM board, which is an aluminum composite sheet. It's a very thin piece of aluminum with a composite center, and then another thin piece of aluminum on the other side. This is the same type of sheeting I used on my micro camper trailer build, if you guys have seen those videos. A little bit thicker, I believe this is about 1/4 inch. This is going to be what is going to be used for our filler panels in our rear interior system. And also we got some Z-channel, and this is how we are going to attach those filler panels to the frame of the system. I will show you a little bit more about that when we get there. And of course, it wouldn't be a truck bed camper project without using Sen Cut Sen. I designed these brackets to match some of the other brackets that are on the camper already, and these will be what kind of finish out our interior build. These are going to go on all our corners to make our corners look nice and neat, top and bottom. These are going to be some other plates to tie some things together, and these are for some of our other corners. And then to top it all off, we are going to be coating it in steel it. For the top of our benches, we're going to be going with some wood. It's actually very similar to the top of this workbench. I haven't decided on color or anything. That'll probably be one of the very last steps of this video. So let's get to cutting some aluminum. All we're using to cut the aluminum is just a miter saw with a steel demon blade on it. This blade is designed to cut metal, and it cuts through the aluminum very easily. I've used this blade on many projects and have not had any signs of needing to be replaced. I highly recommend going this route if you're looking for some accurate 45-degree cuts, or even if you're just processing a lot of material. Another vital piece of equipment I'm using here is a welding table. When it comes to welding structures like this, having the ability to clamp it down exactly where you want it and keep it perfectly square while you tack it in place, it really goes a long way. This is just a cheap table from Northern Tool, and it's made by Clutch. I think it ran a couple $100. You don't have to go buy a huge big buck welding table to tackle some smaller projects like this, and this little table is perfect for my garage and my workshop size. One of my goals for this build out was to not have to drill any holes in the floor of the truck. Not only I didn't want to put any holes in the composite bed, I also didn't want to have to drill through a rubber floor mat and bolt it down to there. So us utilizing our factory bed mounts that we use to hold the camper on the truck itself really helps simplify things, and also just helps tie everything together and make it nice and strong. Alrighty, so now with our back bar and our side bars all bolted up to the mounting locations, all I did was just take some of that angle, I think it's 1 inch by 1.5 inches, and cut it into 2-inch pieces and put them on there where it was going to line up with our mounts. And I just temporarily have one rivet in those just to hold those mounts in place while I make sure that that's exactly where I'm going to need it. From there, I was able to get some measurements on how big our other pieces had to be. For example, running our piece from here to here, I really just had to make sure that what I was cutting was going to be the right size, especially with doing these 45-degree angles. One thing I've done to help line everything up, this is our bottom bar for our front part of our storage, and then this is the top bar, the one that'll be up at the top there. And what I've done is use these, you may have saw in the time lapse, to space things out and make sure my other ones are perfectly upright, just temporarily. That way when I'm doing my measurements from this upright to there, I know exactly what I need to end up making it work, because as you can see, these can wobble around and it can really kind of wildly vary. So next what I'll do is start attaching some more uprights to our bottom here. So I got one that's going to go all the way up to this edge, so we'll do one on each side, and then I think I'm also going to do one in the back that goes all the way up to our back support bar. Once we get those on, it'll be much easier to weld in our top beams, as we'll have some stuff to hold it. We'll have one that this one can rest on, it can rest on that, and then same from here to the back. And then once we get this back in here and get that all tacked up, then I'd like to do all the finish welding outside of the bed of the truck, just to avoid getting sparks and stuff like that all in the back. After getting all of our bars mounted to the bed mounts, it started to become a lot more simple to figure out what size I need to cut the rest of my pieces. Once I figured that out, it was easy enough to just tack these all temporarily in place. That way I can get the general structure of it nailed down, and we can work on getting these other gussets and plates on to really keep it in place before taking it out. Alrighty, we got most of our pieces tacked together here. I just kind of ran around and did little tacks here and there, and not going to fully finish weld it while it's inside the truck. I'd rather keep all the sparks and stuff out of here, so I was just trying to keep that to a minimum. I am going to add some vertical bars in the rear. I'm just going to do that once it's out. As you can imagine, getting back there and welding is a little tight as it sits. But it's a little tricky to get everything lined up, because obviously I wanted everything nice and level and all of our corners to match up while it also being bolted up to the truck. But now that I have everything bolted up as it should be and tacked in place, I got two options here. I can do a few more tacks to make sure nothing moves when I pull this out of the truck. I think I'll be able to lift it up and slide it out one of these windows. Or I can start putting on some of these plates, which I think I'm going to do that just to avoid doing more welding. And I can go ahead and add some plates, because I got plates for all these corners and all these edges, and that'll really strengthen this thing up for when I'm moving it around. That way I don't pull it out of here, weld it up, have everything pulling and moving all over the place, bring it back in here, and then nothing line up right. So I think that's going to be my best option. I never did get an exact weight on this frame, but it is very light. You can pick it up with one hand, which you guys may have seen on my Instagram stories. So once all these plates are in and I knew it wasn't going to move on me, it was very easy to take this out by myself. I just threw a blanket over the edge of the window just so I'm not scratching the camper, and had a table out there just in case I needed a safe place for it to land if it was starting to slide out. With it on the table in the garage, it's easy enough to go ahead and do all of my finish welding. All of our brackets are going to keep it from pushing and pulling anywhere, so everything will still line up once we get it back in the truck. It's also a good idea to plan ahead, go ahead and build any sort of brackets or mounts that you're going to need for other accessories in this build. Here I am just making a mount for my 10-gallon freshwater tank that is going to be in the back cubby. Alrighty, we've got everything welded up. We've got all of our plates riveted on, as you guys saw in the time lapses. We also got a few other little extra pieces I've added on here that I'll kind of quickly go over with you. So this is for a Lagoon table, and this is a mount for it. I will kind of go into this table a little bit more once this is back in the truck, just to kind of show you and make it make a little bit more sense. This back here is our water tank mount. What I've done is basically take 1x2 and then some angle, and I'll have 2 rivets on each side to attach it to the frame itself. I want it to be removable and not welded in, just in case I decide to do something totally different with this storage compartment later on down the road. After this is all in the truck, I'll show you what it looks like with the water tank in there, and how it's all held down. It's basically just gonna have a foot up top there. I do have some miscellaneous brackets all around the sides here, and that is gonna be for our hinges. So we're gonna have 3 hinges on our long doors. We're gonna have 2 on our back, and 3 on this side as well. Our other ones with the holes are obviously for mounting to the truck itself. Next step is we are going to start working on our filler panels. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're going to be doing an ACM aluminum composite panel. And this is actually a black panel. It just comes with a plastic cover to protect the finish while you're working with it. How we're going to be attaching it is with some Z channels. So this started out as aluminum stock from Amazon, which I will have linked in the description. And the cool thing about Z channel is very peculiar shape compared to what you would normally get. And when you're going to mount something like this panel, I could have it riveted here and then have the panel flat mounted to that. So we're basically just going to have some tabs. For example, here we'll have 1, 2, probably just 1 in the middle here, and that will allow me to attach that panel to those tabs and keep it nice and secure, and also be clean, because all you're going to see from the outside is just a rivet at each one of those tabs. So I've cut, I think it was like a total of 40 of these little ones about 1 inch long, and it was more than I needed, but I wasn't sure how many attachment points I'm going to need. So we'll get the table saw out next. We'll start doing some measuring, and we'll start cutting some ACM panels to fit them up for these holes that we want to fill in. The table saw is definitely the right tool for the job here. You get nice straight cuts, and you can also just cut off sliver by sliver until you get it fitting exactly how you'd like. With all of our panels cut out, we are now fitting up our little Z brackets that I showed you before, just using some clamps here to hold them in place. And after I get them positioned, I go ahead and drill a hole through the backside and then through the front. For these front ones, I've just measured it to be right in the middle of all these bars. It should be able to support this needs, especially by the time we do our caulk around the edges. Before we put our rivet in, I did peel back the plastic, that way it wasn't sitting on top of it. But yeah, pretty straightforward way to hold all these panels in there and give them a nice clean look. Obviously from the backside you can still see the rivets and stuff, but overall I think it looks really clean. The whole reason I haven't riveted them in just yet is I still have to paint the frame. Getting all the brackets fixed on here ahead of time, mark which panel's which, I'll be able to pull them out of here, get the frame all painted, and then slip them back in their place, drill some holes on this part of it, and rivet it to the frame itself after it's all painted, and give it that nice finished look. We'll go ahead and fix the panels to the rest of our empty slots up front here, and then we can move on to working on the top of the bench. What we're using is just 3/16 rivets. Just make sure they're aluminum. You do not want to put steel rivets in an aluminum frame because you'll get galvanic corrosion over time. So now that we've got all of our filler panels cut out and made, I just got them stacked here and marked where they go. For now, they're just going to be set off to the side until we get the frame all painted. Then we'll be able to push them in their place, drill some holes, and mount them up. Next thing we're working on is cutting our wood to size for the lids of our benches. I got these pieces of wood from Lowe's, and we ended up getting 3 pieces total. This is for our center bench. It's 3/4 inch thick, 24 by 3 feet. Obviously that'll be some extra left over for there. And then our 2 side benches are 3/4, 20 by 3 feet. So they're just about the right size. As you can see, I got this one all lined up here. I am going to do a little bit of an overhang with the wood just so it sits flush with this outside edge, and obviously I'll end up sanding all of this and finishing it and sealing it with some sort of stain. I'll kind of let you know what I do here at the end. So it'll have a little bit of an overhang around all of those. It'll actually overhang here, and it'll also overhang into our middle compartment slightly. So the first thing we'll do is cut our side benches, and then after our side benches are cut and mounted and we know exactly how they're sitting, then we will measure and cut our middle one. That way we can make sure our gaps in the middle are nice and even. Once again, a table saw is highly recommended for this step, but you can definitely still get away with this just using a regular skill saw and a fence. With our two side benches pretty much cut to the right size, I'm practicing my holes for our hinges. So our hinges require a recess in the wood so it can sit up in there, and then you can see it just kind of pivots on here. I've never installed these type of hinges, so I took some scrap piece from the edge that I cut off, and I'm just practicing and making sure everything lines up right. So the center of our recess needs to be 1 inch from this edge, and if it's any further, I've done a couple tests, then the edge will end up hitting on our frame as it's trying to open. I chose these type of hinges for the lid because if it was just a regular style hinge, obviously when this opens up, the lid would be way back here, and it would start to interfere with the side of the camper. So the way these hinges are, you can see when you open it, it doesn't go back anymore. It actually just kind of stands straight up and won't cause any conflicts with the rest of the camper while it's trying to hinge open. The only downside is we will have a gap, as you can see on the back side here. But that's all right. It's going to be butted up against the frame of the camper and the bedside, so I don't think it's going to be super noticeable. The hinges are a soft close. As you can see, it reaches a point, it starts to just slowly let it down. It may be a little faster than that once the whole weight of the benches. I'm going to have 3 of these hinges, so I'm not really sure what to expect there. I'm really not too worried about it as long as it just doesn't slam shut. That's fine with me. To figure out how far I need to make my hole from this edge, all I did was measure from the edge of our plate here to the center of the landing pad for our hinge. So then I just take that measurement. I go from here, it was 2 5/8, so 2 5/8 this way, and then 1 inch from our bottom edge, and it shows me exactly where I need to drill the hole. To drill it, I'm just using this 35mm bit. I don't really remember exactly what it's called. I got it on Amazon for like $9. It'll be linked in the description, but it makes nice clean holes. As you can see, this is some more testing that I was doing when I was just kind of figuring these things out. Definitely do a 3/4 of an inch material. I probably got about 1/4 of an inch or maybe a little bit more left before it would have actually punched through. But the holes need to be this deep just for the hinges to actually recess in them. So if you're planning on doing a 1/2 inch bench top, it's just not going to work with a hinge like this. Maybe decide to use something different. At first, the thought of installing this style hinge was a little bit intimidating, but just like anything, once you watch a video or two and really look at the instructions and take your time and figure it out, it's really not all too bad. Once I figured out how to do correctly measure where I needed my hole to be, it was a breeze to install the rest of these hinges in the correct places and have everything exactly like I wanted to. Alrighty, that is all of our wood bench tops done. You can see we got some nice gaps all through here. Everything's looking nice and even. One thing I did have to do on the back side is also cut it back some, so this will be hanging out, and I did that because obviously our back lid needed that same clearance just like we did on our edges. So I just went ahead and cut the edges on this just to flush it up. Otherwise this would have been sticking out and it just, I don't know, just wouldn't have looked real good. As far as securing the hinge itself to the frame, I'm just gonna do rivets. I just have 1 rivet in each of them for now, just because I'm gonna have to drill that out whenever I need to take it off to do paint and all that good stuff. Cool thing about these hinges is they are totally removable. So if you ever wanna remove your top, all you do is just do click here, and it just totally removes. So if you have to do cleaning, or maybe you just want to refinish your tops or something and then put it back, you start it there, clicks in. So it's that simple to remove, and also it'll make this thing lighter for when I go to put it in the truck. I'm not sure what color I'm going to do yet. I think I'm going to leave it a lighter color. It's going to get a little darker than this just because the GP Factor table on my back door has a lighter colored cutting board, and I just figured I'd go ahead and match that. But now we're at the point where I can pull all this stuff off and we can start coating the frame. We're going to be using Steel It, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video. I got 3 cans here. Probably end up using like 2 or maybe even just 1. We'll just kind of see. But I got 3 cans just to be safe, and also I'll have some extra for touch-up later down the road. So we'll get this disassembled. I'll wipe everything down with acetone, make sure I don't need to sand any certain spots or anything like that. Then we can start getting the frame painted and work on getting this thing in the truck. Now is the time before you commit to having paint on it, is to really think about what you want out of this system. Make sure you don't need to add any more sort of brackets or supports or just anything that you may need in the future. Obviously, when it comes to painting, prep is everything. Go ahead and wipe down the frame with some acetone. Make sure there's no more debris everywhere, and make sure you're also sanded down. I believe steel it once, 220 grit sanding, just for better adhesion. I'm going to go ahead and plan to do about 2 to 3 coats on this frame. While the frame is drying in between coats of Steel It, we are working on our wood top benches. So what I've done is sand this first with 120 and then 220 grit, and then finished it off with a 400 grit. Now, as far as the finish goes, because I got it so nice and smooth now, I wanted to do a really nice color stain and make it almost resemble a high quality wood top. Doing a little bit of research online and asking for your guys' help on Instagram for suggestions, this is what I've come up with. So first thing we'll do is a pre-stain. This just helps stain spread evenly on softwoods like pine. After that, we'll be going with a stain that's called Honey 272 by Minwax. And this is gonna be a darker color. I think I'm gonna do maybe 2 to 3 coats to get it to the darkness that I want. The reason I'm going with a darker color and not a lighter color is because if this was a lighter colored top, as you guys have seen, it's a lot of wood surface there that I'm gonna be stepping on, we're gonna be sitting on, we're gonna be strapping stuff down to, and I feel like the lighter color would just end up scuffing and really just show dirt over time. So going with a darker finish will just kind of help mask that stuff. I mean, I don't mind stuff showing signs of use, but I think over the years, it's just gonna be much better just being a darker finish. And plus, I'm kind of curious to see how well I can make it turn out. After we get it stained to the color we like, we will be doing some wipe-on polyurethane. And we're gonna probably do 3 to 4 coats of this. And in between each coat of polyurethane, we're going to be sanding, very lightly sanding with some 600 grit. So this is going to be kind of a couple day project here between letting things dry and making sure everything exactly how I want it. At the very end on our last coat, we will just do an extremely light sand if we feel the need with 1000 grit. And that'll just kind of finish it and polish it up. We're going to be applying all this stuff with just some cotton rags. This was just at the store. Went ahead and picked it up. As far as the sanding goes, I'm doing all this by hand. I do have a mouse, but I don't want to get carried away with the mouse. Leave some crazy sand marks. So using a block like this, you just cut the sandpaper and it clips in, and you can be nice and controlled and get the sanding that you want. So first thing, we will apply the pre-stain on all 3 pieces, and then I think about 15 minutes later, we should be clear to go ahead and start staining it with our color. When it comes to making stuff out of wood, I do have just a little bit of experience doing it. Nothing professional, just some hobby work at home. I've made a few end tables and a stand for my TV in the living room. Overall, I do enjoy woodworking, and I think this is probably one of my favorite steps. It does require some patience as far as letting stuff dry in between coats, but if you really take your time, the end result, I think, is totally worth it. We got our final coat of our poly drying on our wood. While it's doing that, we're gonna start working on getting our panels attached. So here's with most of it peeled off. I just left what I have marked to show me where they go. See how there is still just a little bit of a gap when you look at it from the angle here? I'm gonna end up taking some black caulk and filling up all these edges, just like you guys may remember me doing on the camper. So what I'm gonna do to make sure that's nice and neat is I'm gonna end up taping this face as well as the inside face of our walls. That way we can lay our caulk in there, smooth it out with our finger, and have it looking nice and professional and uniform looking. Really, you don't have to do this step, but just as you can see here, all the daylight that you can see through here and here, I just know that'll end up bothering me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this nice little finishing touch that'll really kind of help everything come together. On the back side, we still have to just drill our holes. Once we get everything taped off, I'll put my panels in place, drill some holes, put some rivets in, and then after that, we can continue with putting the caulk in, smoothing it out, and then peeling all the tape up to show our nice clean caulk lines. As you can imagine, this step of the build is a bit tedious, especially when it comes to taping and spreading the caulk and making things look nice and uniform and even. Just like with anything else, I always tell you guys, don't rush through stuff like this. Even if you're almost done with the build, just take your time. You'll appreciate it later on down the road when you don't have to look at some mistakes you might have made while you were just trying to rush to get it done. So that is all the caulk done on our front panels. I am glad I did that and it got rid of those gaps like I had showed you guys. Next thing we're gonna do is get our hinges riveted on. We'll do a test fit with our lids, and then we will start fitting up our gas struts and our magnetic latch catches and just finalize all this stuff before we put it in the truck. It'll be a little easier to work on it out here in the garage. I highly recommend going through and adding these gas struts. If it's something you're on the fence about, just go ahead and do it. I wasn't sure if I was going to need them or not with the hinges that I chose, but I definitely ended up needing them in the end, and very glad I did it. So as you saw, we got our tops installed, we got our gas struts installed. I opted against doing the magnetic stays. I got these little magnets that I kind of figured when the lid was shut, it was going to keep it from rattling around. But honestly, it really doesn't really rattle much at all. And I think, like I maybe have mentioned previously, normally during transportation, we'll probably have like duffel bags or something like that sitting on top of these. So they're really not going to get the opportunity to rattle. And if they do, we're really not going to hear it from inside the cab. So one strut on each side ended up working really good. I, of course, have those linked in the description just to show you how they're attached. I actually bought 8 of the struts. They came in 4 packs. And the mounts that they give you, I basically stole a mount from each strut because I only ended up using 3 of the 8. So I used their kind of little side mount here. They got another one that just has like a ball that comes out, and I don't think it really would have worked for this application. So I guess just keep that in mind when you're buying them. If you look at them on the listing, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about as far as those mounts go. But one seems plenty. You can see as it starts to go up, it'll just automatically push it. And then on the way down, we don't get any slam or loud bang, and I think that's partly because these are like soft close as well. So once the strut over there stops working, the other ones just kind of take over. Our middle one, just because of how I guess long it is, I mounted the strut a little bit higher up on it just to give it a little more leverage and push. Obviously, the closer you get to the edge, the less effective the strut's going to be. So if you ever feel like you mount them up and it's not as strong as you want to be, just move the strut up some, and that'll give it a little more of an advantage and help it push that lid up. As far as this one on the way down, just because of how heavy and long it is, it does kind of slam, but we have our little rubber stoppers here that came with our hinges that I put on all 4 corners, which just kind of softened the blow. But overall, really happy with how that turned out. I've got the truck all cleaned out and ready, so I'm gonna go ahead and take these lids off just to make it a little bit lighter. We will get the bench system inside the truck, get our lids back on, get it all bolted down, and we'll show you what the end result looks like. Installation was definitely much easier without the lids on, just having more places to grab and being just a tad lighter. It was a 2-person job, just making sure nothing got scratched or dented, but it's always satisfying to finally get your project in its final place and get an idea of how it's going to turn out. Alrighty guys, interior build is all done. I'm getting the camper here and kind of give you a little rundown. So as you guys know, I designed this so 2 people can sit across from each other, eat a meal, or just kind of hang out. And also we got our table that just swivels around every which way so you can configure it however you want to get comfy. And also I wanted to be able to swivel it back like this while it clears that wall. Basically, you just have more room to get in and out of the camper, but still have your table there. And of course, you can get here, kick back, throw a leg up, have an armrest, have a beer, enjoy the view. Just have a place that just kind of feels like home, especially if you're out on extended trips. Of course, so you can open up all your side hatches here, or if it's wintertime, you can plumb the diesel heater in through the window and just have a nice place to hang out and eat or cook even, and just do whatever you need to do. When it comes to packing up, it's a real simple process. We got our little handles on the bottom side of the table here. They basically just loosen, and once those are loose, you can just lift this straight off. We got a track on the bottom of our tabletop here. So once we loosen this, we can pull this up on here and then slide this onto the bottom of the table. And then we end up with a nice, neat package that we can then store inside of our side bench here. Here's another view from the top, just to show you guys how much space is actually left in the truck. You could even have some people sitting up here if you guys are just kind of talking and hanging out, and then have 2 people down there just to make it a little more comfortable versus squeezing a bunch of people in down there. But overall, I think we're going to make great use of this space. Honestly, even be able to make a little bit of food right here if we wanted. I think the jet boil would fit on that. And of course, as well as the little miniature jet boil, so you can make some mountain house meals or make some coffee in the morning before you even get out of the camper. All right guys, a little bit of a quick update here. This actually happened to me after I got done filming this full part of the video. I just wanted to add this in to show you what you should also do. So you see these supports that I had not mentioned previously. I did not have those. And what happened was when I was done filming, I stepped on this bench to get my camera from up there. and it actually broke the bench because this is all wood planks that are glued together from Lowe's. There was barely any glue, I guess, from the factory holding it there. So the moment I stepped on it, I heard a pop and I thought it was just everything shifting. I stepped off and noticed that it actually cracked and completely separated. What I had to do was wood glue it back together, clamp it for a whole day, let it dry. And then I made these supports out of 3/4 by 3/4 aluminum tube, 16th inch wall, so they don't really weigh anything. I did 45-degree cuts on each side, so I had access for screws on top and bottom, and then drilled one access hole. So what this allows now is it to be able to be stepped on, and all of these supports are going to take the weight versus the glued sections taking the weight. So I should never be able to have it happen again. I did the back lid and both of the side hatches. It's one of those things I probably should have done from the beginning. So if you're using a wood like this, go ahead and do these supports too, so you don't end up finishing your project and then step on it and break your wood. Thankfully, I was able to save this and I didn't have to redo a whole plank, which would have been pretty unfortunate. You can't even tell where it happened. I really lined it up well and used the wood glue in the clamps and made sure everything was as flush as possible. You can barely feel a height difference with your finger, but you can't even see it with your eyes. So got really lucky on that. Just one thing I really want you guys to also add to yours if you're doing these wood tops, so you don't have to deal with one of them breaking like I did. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can just leave them down below and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. If there's anything you think I didn't cover or any parts that I may have left out, when I build these descriptions out and try to list all the parts that I've used, sometimes it's easy for me to skip over something. So just drop me a comment below and remind me if I did, and I'll go ahead and reply to your comment with the link, as well as add it to the updated description. Next up on the build series, we're probably going to be doing an interior walk around. I am working on an electrical system. I'm honestly waiting for a certain brand of lights to release a certain type of light, which I don't know if that's actually going to happen yet or not. Just kind of waiting before I could dive into the electrical until I get that. I don't want to put some lights in here that I'm not happy with, so I really want to wait for those, and hopefully that'll happen soon. Aside from that, it could just be a walk around of how I had the truck set up. You know, after I've gone camping in it and kind of customized things and got pouches and storage and all that stuff around the camper, we'll just kind of feel that out as we go. If you guys have any ideas on what I could add to the camper, please also drop that in the comments down below. I'm always open to suggestions. You guys have come up with some great suggestions in the past, and I've incorporated some of those into my build as I've gone. You guys have suggested something and seen me do it, most likely because of you letting me know about it and giving me that idea. So I really do truly appreciate that. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.